The screech of tires ripped through the rain-slicked Brooklyn night like a scream I couldn't unhear. My Chevy Impala spinning out on the wet asphalt of the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway. Headlights blurring into the storm as the world flipped end over end. I remember the crunch of metal folding around me, the taste of blood sharp on my tongue, and then, nothing but the cold bite of asphalt against my cheek. My leg twisted at an angle that shouldn't exist, screaming in a voice my body could no longer make. In that suspended void, as sirens wailed closer, I thought of Alex, the lover who'd left me 6 months ago with nothing but a text message and a ghost of a life we'd built in our cramped Williamsburg loft. And I whispered to the darkness, "If I make it out, I'll rewrite every damn page." When I woke, the world was a haze of beeps and sterile white, my body a map of bandages and fur lines snaking across my chest like accusations. The doctor who saved me, Dr. Elias Hart. His name stitched in blue on the white coat that hung on his frame like it was made for a man who'd seen too much and given even more, leaned over me, his dark eyes steady as he adjusted the morphine drip. "William Hale," he said, voice low and edged with that Midwestern calm that cut through the fog. "You've got 9 lives left, but this one's on borrowed time. Welcome back." His hand lingered on my wrist a beat too long, pulse thumping under his fingers, and in that touch, something ignited, a spark I hadn't felt since Alex shattered me, a pull toward the stranger who'd pulled me from the wreckage. Rehab was a grind, a 6-week sentence in the fluorescent bowels of Mount Sinai's ortho ward, where the days blurred into therapy sessions and phantom pains that clawed at my dreams. But Elias, he became my anchor, his rounds a ritual I craved like air. I'd catch glimpses of him in the hallway, white coat flapping as he joked with nurses or reviewed charts with that furrowed brow that made him look less like a surgeon and more like a poet who'd traded verses for scalpels. He was 35. I'd overheard. Divorced. No kids. A transplant from Chicago who'd chased the lights of New York for reasons he never shared. Gay, too. Or at least that's what the rainbow pin on his lanyard whispered, subtle as a secret in a city that thrived on them. I shouldn't have started scheming on day 3, but desperation's a hell of a motivator. My phone was smashed in the wreck, contacts scattered like shrapnel, and with no family left. Mom gone to cancer when I was 20, Dad a faded memory in Ohio. I was adrift. Elias was my lifeline, the only face that didn't pity me when I hobbled on crutches, my left femur bolted together with titanium that itched like regret. So I hacked together a plan, low-tech and desperate. I sweet-talked a nurse's aide into slipping my number into his pager's emergency contact slot, claiming it was for follow-up care. Then, from the hospital Wi-Fi, I scoured his public profiles, LinkedIn for his alma mater, Instagram for the coffee shop he geotagged in the village. Every encounter after that, mine to orchestrate, threads pulled from the shadows. The first one landed soft, a week in. I timed it perfectly. His shift ended at 7 p.m., and I'd begged physical therapy to run late, positioning myself in the lobby with a wheelchair and a thermos of bad vending machine coffee. Rain hammered the windows again, mirroring that night, and when he emerged, coat slung over his arm, I called out, "Dr. Hart, Elias? Wait up." He paused, surprise flickering across his face like sunlight on water, and turned. "William, you're looking steadier." I held up the thermos. "Bribe for the guy who glued me back together." "Black, 2 sugars. Guessed from the way you take your chart notes." A lie? I'd glimpsed his mug in the break room. He laughed, that deep rumble that vibrated through me, and took it, our fingers brushing. We talked for 20 minutes under the awning. About the storm that nearly ended me and the one he'd outrun from the Windy City. Divorce? I probed gently. He shrugged, eyes distant. Love's a surgery sometimes. Cut too deep, and you bleed out. By the time he hailed a cab, my heart was racing faster than the EKG ever had. From there, it snowballed. I accidentally booked my follow-up MRI for the same afternoon as his lunch break at that village spot, the Beanery, a hole in the wall with exposed brick and playlists heavy on indie folk. I nursed a latte at the corner table, leg propped on a stool, and when he walked in, scrubs swapped for jeans and a Henley that hugged his swimmer's build. He froze, then grinned. Stalking my caffeine fix. Hail, I feigned innocence, waving my phone. Uber suggested it. Small world. We shared a table, knees bumping under the scarred wood, and he opened up about his ex, a Wall Street shark who'd traded their Tribeca brownstone for a penthouse and a younger model, about the isolation of residency, nights stitching up gunshot wounds while his own heart unraveled. I mirrored him, spilling about Alex, how we'd met at a Bushwick warehouse party, bodies slick with sweat and synth beats, building a life on borrowed dreams until he bailed for LA. And figuring himself out. Elias's hand covered mine then, brief but electric. Sounds like he lost the plot. You're the story worth telling. Word count crept up in stolen moments. A park bench in Washington Square after my discharge, where I bumped into him during my PT jog, leaves crunching underfoot as we dissected the latest Scorsese flick over falafel from a cart. He confessed his fear of flying, ironic for a trauma surgeon, and I teased him about it, our laughter echoing off the arch like a promise. Then came the night I rigged the real magic, hacking the hospital's volunteer roster, a favor from a tech-savvy cousin in Queens. I slotted myself into the LGBTQ plus support group Elias facilitated every Thursday. The room smelled of chamomile tea and quiet confessions, folding chairs in a circle under posters preaching, "You are enough." I sat across from him, sharing my rebirth, the accident as a metaphor for shedding Alex's shadow, and his gaze held mine, dark and searching, like he saw the orchestration but didn't mind the strings. By month 2, it was a dance we both knew the steps to. Dinners at dim Italian joints in Little Italy, where Chianti loosened his tongue about growing up queer in a Chicago suburb, hiding crushes on the quarterback while dissecting frogs in bio class. I'd counter with my own tales, bartending in the East Village, slinging Manhattans to drag queens and heartbroken poets. The night I came out to Dad over a crackling phone line, his silence louder than any slur. Our touches lingered. His thumb tracing my knuckles over tiramisu, my shoulder against his on the subway home, the city lights streaking past like shooting stars. Sex? Not yet, but the tension hummed, electric as the third rail, in the way he'd lean in close during a walk along the High Line, breath warm against my ear as he murmured, "Your trouble, William." The good kind, but shadows loomed. Elias started pulling back, texts unanswered for hours, excuses about double shifts piling up like unpaid bills. I doubled down, orchestrating a weekend getaway, faking a work conference invite to a cabin in the Catskills, slipping the details into his calendar via a shared app I'd innocently suggested for tracking meds. He bit, driving up in his battered Subaru, flannel shirt rolled to his elbows, and for 2 days, it was paradise, hikes through crimson foliage, our hands clasped on rocky trails, nights by the fire, bodies entwining slow and deliberate, his lips mapping the scars on my thigh like sacred text. I haven't felt this alive since med school, he whispered against my neck, fingers threading through my hair as we moved together, sweat slick and urgent, the world narrowing to the creak of the bed and our shared breaths. Yet doubt festered. On the drive back, his phone buzzed incessantly, texts from Jay that he silenced too quickly. I didn't pry, not then, but the seed was planted. Back in the city, our rhythm faltered. A canceled dinner, a brush-off at the gym where I happened to spot him lifting weights, his form poetry in motion but his smile strained. I pushed harder, engineering a surprise at his favorite jazz club in Harlem, tickets to a Coltrane tribute, left anonymously at his door with a note, for the man who fixed my broken rhythm. He showed, eyes lighting up as he pulled me into a hug that smelled of cedar and hospital antiseptic. But midway through a love supreme, his hand went slack in mine. The unraveling hit like a second crash, 2 months post-discharge. I'd planned the perfect night. Rooftop reservation at the press lounge, Manhattan's skyline sprawling below like a glittering confession. Dressed in my best button-down, leg brace hidden under slim chinos, I waited with champagne chilling, heart pounding with the vulnerability of it all. He arrived late, tie askew, and when he sat, his words tumbled out like spilled sutures. William, it's been a dream. But I can't. The glass slipped from my fingers, fizzing across the tablecloth. Jay? From the phone. He nodded, gaze dropping to the Hudson's dark ribbon. Jordan. We were on a break when we met, his idea, after the divorce fallout. But he's back, in therapy, promising change. And God, I owe it to try. Betrayal isn't a knife. It's a slow bleed, the kind that leaves you gasping in the quiet. Jordan, tall, blonde, the ex who'd gutted him, had slunk back from whatever European sabbatical he'd taken, all apologies and grand gestures. Elias, ever the fixer, couldn't resist. I saw it in fragments. A paparazzi snap on page 6 of them at Le Coucou, his arm around Jordan's waist. A LinkedIn update for Jordan's reconciliation consulting firm, tagged with heart emojis. My orchestrations turned frantic. Anonymous tips to Elias's colleagues about Jordan's past infidelities, pieced from old Reddit threads. A chance run-in at a queer film festival where I cornered him in the lobby, voice cracking as I begged. He's poison, Elias. You deserve the rewrite, not the rerun. He shut me out, texts bouncing to voicemail. The support group suddenly on hiatus. The climax crashed on a muggy August evening. Storm clouds bruising the sky as I tailed him to Central Park. I'd gone too far, hacking his email, printing screenshots of Jordan's flirty DMs to a trainer in Soho, and cornered him on the Bow Bridge, rain starting to spit. You think you can play God with my life? He roared, face twisted in fury I'd never seen. The man who'd stitched my wounds now wielding words like scalpels. Every coffee, every night. It was all a setup? I thought it was fate. William. Real. I crumpled the printouts, soaked and useless, my leg throbbing as thunder cracked. It started that way, but it became real. You became my everything. He turned away, shoulders rigid, and walked into the downpour, leaving me there, reborn only to break again. Desperation peaked in the weeks that followed, a spiral of bad decisions, drowning sorrows at the Stonewall Inn, picking fights with shadows of Alex in every barfly's glance. Therapy sessions where I confessed the manipulations to a wide-eyed counselor, her notes scribbling obsessive attachment. Elias's silence was a void, sucking the color from autumn's blaze, until one gray November dawn, a knock shattered it. He stood on my stoop in Prospect Heights, scrubs rumpled, eyes hollowed by exhaustion. "Jordan's gone. Again." Left a note this time, said I'm too broken for his brand of perfect. His voice cracked, and he stepped inside without invitation, collapsing onto my thrift store couch. We didn't speak for an hour, just sat in the wreckage, my hand eventually finding his, tentative as a first stitch. Rebuilding was quieter, stripped of schemes. No more strings, just the raw work of showing up, coffee runs without agendas, walks where silences spoke louder than confessions. He talked about the betrayal, not just Jordan's, but his own, for almost choosing safety over the mess of me. I admitted the orchestration, every calculated brush of skin, and waited for the door to slam. Instead, he pulled me close, forehead to mine. "You pulled me from my own crash, William." Maybe we both needed the rewrite. Winter thawed into tentative spring, our love unfolding like the cherry blossoms along the promenade. Fragile, fierce, unscripted. We adopted a rescue mutt named Crash, who tripped over his own paws, a reminder that some collisions lead to home. In the end, rebirth isn't a solo act. It's the grace of being seen, scars and all, in a city that chews up dreams and spits out survivors. Elias and I, we didn't get the fairy tale, no Vegas elopement or picket fence in the burbs. But on quiet nights in our shared Brooklyn walk-up, his head on my chest as rain tapped the window, I knew we'd orchestrated something truer. A life where accidents forge, not fracture, the heart. The first real fracture in our fragile peace came not from Elias, but from the ghost of Jordan, who slithered back into our orbit like a bad sequel no one asked for. It was mid-December, the city wrapped in twinkling lights and the sharp bite of holiday cheer that always tasted like ash to me. We'd just hung our first tree, a scraggly Charlie Brown fir from a lot in Park Slope, when Elias's phone lit up during dinner, Jordan's name flashing like a warning flare. He silenced it, but the damage was done. His fork hovered over the lasagna. Appetite vanished. "Block him," I said, too sharp, my voice echoing the paranoia I'd buried post-confrontation. Elias's jaw tightened, that Midwestern stoicism cracking. "It's not that simple, Will. He's hurting, threatening to. I don't know. Spiral. The word hung heavy, a surgeon's shorthand for the abyss. Jordan had always been the dramatic one, the type to turn heartbreak into headlines. And now, with Elias's compassion as bait, he cast lines from afar. Late-night voicemails pleading for one coffee, for old times, emails laced with nostalgia about their first pride in Chicago, rainbow flags waving like surrender. I watched Elias delete them, but doubt wormed in. Had I ever truly erased the competition? Or just postponed the rematch? My old habits itched. I could dig deeper, unearth more dirt, but I'd promised transparency, the kind that leaves calluses on the soul. Instead, I poured us whiskey neat, the burn chasing shadows, and we talked until the radiator clanged like a metronome to our confessions. "You're not his fixer anymore," I murmured, tracing the vein in his wrist, pulse steady under my thumb. He leaned into me, breath warm against my collarbone. "And you're not the puppet master. We're just us." That night, we made love slow and deliberate, bodies mapping familiar territories with renewed reverence. His hands gentle on my scars, my lips whispering affirmations against his temple. It was romantic, yes, the kind of intimacy that poets cheapen with metaphors, but underneath thrummed the drama of two men who danced with death and emerged scarred but standing. New Year's brought a fragile high, a countdown in Times Square we'd sworn off after one too many elbow jostles in years past. Instead, we opted for intimacy. Rooftop of our building with a thermos of spiked cider, the ball drop a distant roar as fireworks bloomed over the East River. Elias pulled a small box from his coat pocket. Nothing flashy, just a silver keychain etched with a tiny Brooklyn bridge. "For the loft," he said, cheeks flushed from cold and vulnerability. "If you want, make it ours." My throat tightened, the weight of it heavier than any titanium rod. "Hell yes," I choked out, kissing him fierce under the pyrotechnics. "The city our witness." But betrayal, that sly bastard, doesn't wait for confetti to settle. It struck in February, Valentine's Day of all ironies, when Elias was pulled into a marathon shift at the ER, massive pileup on the FDR, twisted metal and lives hanging by threads. I paced our apartment, leg aching in sympathy, firing off texts that went unread. By midnight, worry turned to white-hot rage. I grabbed my coat and crutches, still a crutch, damn it, and hailed a car to the hospital. The waiting room was a war zone of fluorescent hell, families huddled like refugees, but I spotted him in the break room through the glass, slumped over a vending machine coffee, Jordan at his side. They didn't see me at first, Jordan's hand on Elias's shoulder, murmuring low comfort or conquest. Elias looked wrecked, eyes red-rimmed, scrubs stained with what I prayed was not blood. When Jordan leaned in, lips brushing Elias's temple in a gesture too intimate for just friends, my world tilted. I burst through the door, crutches clattering, voice a whip crack. "Get your hands off him." Heads turned, nurses, a janitor mopping linoleum, but I didn't care. Jordan recoiled, all polished wasp entitlement, sneering, "This isn't your scene, Hale." Elias called me. Needed someone who gets it. Elias surged up, face paling. "Will, it's not," but it was. In the fallout, crammed into a supply closet reeking of bleach and bandages, he spilled. Jordan had shown up unannounced, claiming a breakdown, and in the chaos of the shift, Elias had let him stay, let the old patterns slip back like a habit. No kiss, no affair, just the gravitational pull of history, the betrayal not in action but in allowance. "I froze," he admitted, back against shelves of gauze, my crutches propped like sentinels. "You were right, he's a vortex. But I didn't want to drag you into the mess." I laughed, bitter and broken. "Too late. I'm already in it, Doc. Up to my scars." We fought then, words flying like shrapnel. Me accusing him of cowardice, him hurling back my manipulations as the original sin. "You built us on lies. How do I trust this isn't another play?" The door rattled with a knock. Security, probably, but we ignored it, collapsing into each other instead, sobs mingling with curses. Outside, Jordan waited like a vulture, but Elias sent him packing with a finality that echoed through the halls. "We're done. For good." Dawn broke gray over the skyline as we drove home, my head on his shoulder, the betrayal a bruise we'd both wear. Spring unfurled tentative. Therapy our new ritual, couple sessions in a sunlit office off Union Square, where a no-nonsense shrink named Carla unpacked our baggage like a surgeon's kit. Elias confronted his savior complex. the way medicine had wired him to mend at personal cost. I dissected my control freakery, born from Alex's abandonment and the accident's chaos. It was humanistic, this work, raw, unglamorous, the romance reborn not in grand gestures but in the quiet victories. Grocery runs where we argued over kale versus spinach, lazy Sundays binging The Wire with Crash snoring at our feet. Yet conflict simmered, bubbling up in unexpected ways. Elias's ex-boss, a Silver Fox chief of surgery with a penchant for mentoring young docs, started sniffing around, dinners pitched as networking, emails laced with subtext. I smelled sabotage, Jordan's fingerprints perhaps, but Elias waved it off. Paranoia. Will. Let it go. Until the gala, Mount Sinai's annual fundraiser at the Met, black tie affair where egos glittered brighter than chandeliers. I rented a tux that hid my brace, Elias devastating in midnight blue, his hand warm in mine as we navigated marble halls. But when the chief cornered him by the coat check, whispering promises of a fellowship in Boston, away from the noise, Elias, with someone who appreciates your talents. I saw the flicker in his eyes, the temptation of escape. I didn't orchestrate this one. Jealousy did the work, propelling me across the room, interrupting with a glass of champagne and a possessive arm around his waist. Babe, dance. The chief's smile curdled, but Elias followed, bodies swaying to a string quartet's rendition of My Funny Valentine. You think I want out? He murmured, breath hot against my ear. Boston's got nothing on this on you. We slipped away early, hailing a cab to our loft, shedding tuxes in the hallway, tumbling into bed with the urgency of near loss. His body over mine, deliberate and devouring, we reclaimed territory, fingers interlacing, gazes locked, the climax a shuddering release that left us gasping, entwined, the city's hum a lullaby. Summer brought the true test, a road trip we'd planned as penance and promise. Chicago for Elias, to face the ghosts of his youth. Ohio for me, a detour to the house where Dad's ghost lingered. We packed the Subaru with snacks and Crash's leash, hitting I-80 under a vast Midwest sky that dwarfed our dramas. En route, stories spilled. His first kiss behind a bleachers at a homecoming game, fumbling and fervent. My coming out road rage with Dad, tires squealing as I peeled out of the driveway, heart pounding. Laughter mixed with tears, the miles melting resentments. Chicago hit hard, Elias's old neighborhood, bungalows sagging under ivy, the diner where he'd nursed crushes over milkshakes. We walked the lakefront, wind whipping off Michigan, and he broke. Jordan proposed here, on a whim. I said yes because I was scared of alone. I stopped him, hands cupping his face. You're not alone. Not anymore. That night, in a B&B with creaky floors, we made love to the distant wail of the L train, slow and sacred, his whispers of I love you, the antidote to every betrayal. Ohio was quieter, my father's ranch-style tomb in Dayton, weeds choking the walk. Dad had died alone, heart attack mid-argument with the TV, and the house echoed with unspoken apologies. Elias held my hand through the dust, packing faded photos, me at 10, gap-toothed and grinning, and we left with a box of ghosts, lighter for the sharing. Back on the road, under stars unpolluted by city glare, he proposed not with a ring, but a vow. Wherever we crash next, we fix it together. I nodded, tears blurring the taillights. Reborn not despite the wreckage, but because of it. Autumn circled back, leaves turning traitor gold as our first anniversary loomed. Not from the accident, but from that rain-soaked lobby coffee, the one I'd engineered but we'd claimed as fate. New York pulsed with its usual frenzy. Subways sardined with commuters, but for us, it was a season of subtle shifts. Elias up for tenure at Mount Sinai, his lectures on trauma care drawing crowds. Me, freelancing graphic design from our sunlit kitchen, scars fading to silver threads. Romance wove through the mundane, notes tucked into lunch bags, don't let the interns bleed you dry, stolen kisses in bodega aisles over plantains. Yet beneath the humanism, drama brewed, a slow simmer threatening to boil over. It started with a letter, innocuous at first, crisp envelope from a law firm in the Loop, addressed to Elias at the hospital. He brought it home, tossing it on the counter amid takeout tie, but I glimpsed the return, Jordan's name, bold as a scar. "What's this?" I asked, fork pausing mid-noodle. He shrugged, popping a spring roll. "Divorce settlement loose ends." Nothing, but his nonchalance rang false, and later, when he showered, I slid it open, old habit dying hard. Pages of legalese, but buried in Clause 7, a demand for shared assets, including a painting Elias had gifted back during their split, now appraised at 5 figures. Jordan's play, petty and pointed, a jab from across the heartland. I confronted him over dishes, suds bubbling like accusations. "He's baiting you." "Don't engage." Elias dried his hands, eyes weary. "It's business. We'll sign and seal." But I saw the hook sink deeper. Calls from the lawyer, then Jordan himself, voice oily over speakerphone during a rare night off. "Just want what's fair, Eli." For the memories, Elias hung up, but the seed of conflict sprouted, nights he tossed, murmuring about closure, days he lingered at work, avoiding the tension coiling in our loft. I didn't orchestrate this time. I resisted, channeling energy into us, surprise tickets to a Yankees game, where we cheered amid beer-soaked roars, his laugh a bomb. But betrayal's echo lingered, Jordan's shadow lengthening. The climax erupted in October, a tempest of wind and regret mirroring my accident storm. Elias had a conference in D.C. Trauma Symposium, 3 days of panels and PowerPoints, and I waved him off at Penn Station, kissing him fierce amid the Amtrak rush. "Call me," I said, and he did, nightly check-ins laced with exhaustion and affection. Until night 2, radio silence, phone dead to texts, my mind spinning worst-case reels, car wreck, relapse, or worse, Jordan. By dawn, panic clawed, I booked the Bolt bus, leg brace be damned, arriving in D.C. as rain lashed the Capitol's domes. The hotel was a Marriott off DuPont Circle, lobby buzzing with docs and lanyards. But Elias wasn't in sessions, he was in the bar, corner booth, Jordan across from him, martini stems between them like drawn swords. I froze in the doorway, heart hammering, the scene a gut punch, Elias's hand on the table, inches from Jordan's, faces close in what looked like conspiracy. No embrace, but the intimacy of shared history screamed louder than any tabloid snap. I stormed over, chair scraping as I loomed. "What the actual fuck?" Elias startled, color draining. "Will how?" Jordan smirked, all teeth and triumph. "Surprise reunion. Eli here was just telling me about your little hobby. The stalking, the setups, Charming. The word dripped venom, and pieces clicked. Elias must have confessed in a weak moment. Vulnerability weaponized. Betrayal doubled, tripled Elias's slip, Jordan's glee. You told him? I hissed, crutches digging into carpet. Elias stood, hands raised. Last night, over drinks. He cornered me in the lobby, said he was in town for business. I needed to end it clean. But I mentioned the orchestrations. Yeah. Thought it was ancient history. Ancient? It was our origin myth, the threadbare truth we'd woven into trust. Jordan leaned back, savoring. Ancient like the lies you built your fairy tale on. Eli deserves better than a manipulator. The bar hushed, eyes on us like spotlights, and something snapped. Not rage, but clarity, cold and cutting. You deserve each other, I spat, turning on my heel, rain swallowing me as I bolted into the street. Elias chased, coat flapping, grabbing my arm under a street lamp's sodium glow. Wait, please. It was closure, not closure. I love you, Will. Jordan's nothing. We argued in the downpour, voices drowned by thunder. Me railing against his naivety, him defending his heart's old wounds. You think I don't know betrayal? I sewed you back together, he yelled, water streaming down his face. And I pulled you from yours, I shot back, chest heaving. Passers-by gawked, umbrellas blooming like judgments. But we didn't stop until exhaustion hit, collapsing against a metro grate, soaked and spent. I'm sorry, he whispered, forehead to mine. For dragging ghosts here. For not seeing the trap. I nodded, numb. And I'm sorry for the lies that started it. But we end this together. Back in the room, Jordan ejected by security with a restraining order in the works. We peeled off wet clothes, bodies shivering as we crawled under stiff sheets. No sex that night, just holding, his arms around me, my head on his chest, listening to the stutter of his heart. Dawn brought pragmatism. Elias skipped the final panel. We caught an early train home, the Acella's sway lulling us into uneasy peace. Jordan faded after that, settlement signed, painting shipped COD, a cease and desist sealing the vault. But the scar lingered, a reminder that love's not a straight incision. Its sutures prone to pulling. Winter wrapped us tight, holidays a deliberate reclaiming. Thanksgiving at a friend's in Harlem, turkey and toasts to survival. Christmas with Crash's new chew toy under the tree. Elias's gift to me a leather-bound journal. For the real stories, no scripts. We wrote in it together, alternating pages. His dreams of mentoring queer med students, my sketches of a future graphic novel about rebirths. Emotion swelled, romantic in its restraint. The way he'd trace my brace line with kisses, murmuring gratitude. How I'd wake him with coffee and quiet. You're my plot twist. Yet humanism demands growth, not stasis, and spring tested us anew. Elias's tenure hinged on a research grant, innovative protocols for queer trauma patients, addressing disparities in care, and applications loomed like storm fronts. Nights blurred into data dives, my role cheerleader and sounding board, but stress frayed edges, snapped words over takeout, silences thick as fog. One evening, post-argument about his all-nighters, you're killing yourself. I unearthed the journal, flipping to his last entry. Fear I'll fail them, the kids like me, hiding in ER bays. But Will reminds me, failure's just the setup for the comeback. Tears blurred ink, and I found him on the fire escape, city lights haloing his silhouette. "You're not failing," I said, joining him, our legs dangling over the void. "You're the doctor who saved me, remember?" He turned. I soughed. "And you're the patient who orchestrated his way into my heart." Laughter broke the tension, and we kissed there, slow and deep, the skyline our confessor. The grant came through, a modest sum but a milestone, celebrated with a picnic in Prospect Park, wine, cheese, crash-chasing frisbees, as cherry petals rained like benedictions. Summer sealed it, a vow renewed on the anniversary eve. No rings, just tattoos, matching bridges inked on inner wrists. Brooklyn's span, a symbol of crossings, survived. We honeymooned local, weekend in the Hamptons, borrowed beach house where waves crashed like applause, bodies bronzed and bare under dunes. Sex was playful then, exploratory, his hands pinning mine in sand, my teeth grazing his collarbone, culminating in a climax that left us breathless, laughing at the stars. "Reborn," he panted, and I echoed, together, in the quiet aftermath. As fireflies blinked like distant hopes, I realized the true arc, not my schemes or his salvations, but the messy, merciful dance of two souls refusing the easy out. America, with its concrete canyons and heartland hollows, had been our crucible, dramatic falls, emotional rises, romantic redemptions. Humanistic to the core, our story ended not in perfection, but in persistence, a love orchestrated once by design, sustained forever by grace. The wheel turned again that fall, as if fate or karma, or just New York's relentless churn, couldn't resist one last spin. Elias's rising star at Mount Sinai meant invitations. TEDx talks on queer resilience, panels at GLAAD galas where spotlights amplified vulnerabilities. I tagged along when I could, proud in the wings, but pride mingled with the old phantom, fear of loss, that I'd blink and he'd be poached by a Boston fellowship or a Chicago homecoming. No more orchestrations. I'd learned that lesson in DC's rain, but vigilance, it lingered, a low hum. Conflict reignited subtly, a spark from an unlikely source. My past, unearthed like a landmine. Alex, the ghost who'd launched this odyssey, resurfaced via a mutual friend's wedding invite, big bash in the Finger Lakes, vineyard vows for a college buddy tying the knot. Elias encouraged me, "Go. Close that loop." But closure's a myth. Arriving at the sprawling estate, fairy lights strung over manicured lawns, I spotted him immediately. Alex, leaner, sun-kissed from LA. Gigs, laughing with old crew by the bar. Our eyes met across the tent, a jolt like static, and he approached, flute of Prosecco in hand. "Will. Heard about the wreck, Jesus. You okay?" "Okay." The word mocked, as we fell into stilted chat, his scriptwriting breakthroughs, my accident as inspirational fodder, but undercurrents pulled. His hand on my arm, lingering, compliments laced with what-ifs. "You look good." Stronger, betrayal's echo, not from him this time, but my own traitorous pulse, quickening at the familiarity. I excused myself, heart racing to the lakeside dock, where fireflies danced over black water. Elias called then, voice tinny over spotty signal. "Having fun," I confessed fragments. "Alex is here." Stirring shit. Silence stretched. Then his calm. Stirring, or unfinished. We talked an hour, his words anchoring. You're mine, Will. But if there's residue, face it. I'll be waiting. Face it, I did. The reception winding down to slow dances and slurred toasts. Alex cornered me by the dessert table, breath boozy. Missed this, us. His kiss attempt was clumsy, rebuffed by my palm to his chest. Us was a draft. Alex. I finished the book. Security, weddings bouncer, hauled him off, muttering apologies. But the drama peaked in my hotel room mirror later. Bruises of old loves fading, new ones etched deeper. I drove home at dawn, Elias meeting me at the door with coffee and quiet. Tell me, he said, no judgment, and I did the temptation, the rejection, the clarity. He pulled me close, lips to my temple. Proud of you. For choosing us. Winter deepened the bond. Holidays evolving into traditions. Hanukkah lacks for his half-Jewish roots. Christmas Eve volunteering at a queer youth shelter. Serving cocoa to kids with stories mirroring our youths, hidden crushes, family fractures. One boy, 16 and wide-eyed, clutched Elias's sleeve post-story time. You think it gets better? Elias knelt. Honest, it does. But it takes work, the kind that scars, then heals. I watched, throat tight, the humanism of it all. Not saviors, but survivors sharing the map. Climax loomed in March. A professional storm. Elias's research hit a snag. Funding cuts from a conservative board. Whispers of controversial topics in queer health. Protests brewed. Op-eds in the Times decrying erasure. And he threw himself in. Rallies in Union Square where chants of health for all thrummed like heartbeats. I marched beside him, sign hoisted high, but tension mounted, nights he paced, drafting appeals. Mornings I found him asleep at the desk, notes crumpled. This could tank everything, he confessed one blizzard-lashed evening, snow piling against windows like unresolved grief. Betrayal struck from within. A leak to the Post. Anonymous source claiming Elias's personal biases skewed data, code for his queerness. Our life a tabloid footnote. Reporters camped our stoop. Flashes popping like gunfire. And paranoia peaked. Was it the chief? Nursing grudge from the gala? Jordan, Spite's long arm? We hunkered. Crash whining at the door. But Elias cracked first, snapping at a delivery guy mistaken for press, then at me over burnt toast. I can't lose this, not now. The fight escalated in our bedroom, voices echoing off brick. Me urging caution, him accusing timidity. You orchestrated us? Where's that fire? I hurled back. For us? Not your ego. We parted furious. Him to the hospital, me to a dive bar in Greenpoint, nursing IPAs amid hipsters and hurt. Hours later, his text, roof. Please. I climbed, wind whipping, finding him with a bottle of bourbon and tear-streaked cheeks. It's the board, my own mentor. Said my lifestyle distracts, betrayal raw. He sobbed into my shoulder, the city a frozen witness. We sat there till numb, then inside, thawing with touches, gentle, apologetic, building to a crescendo of need, bodies urgent, reclaiming agency in sweat and sighs, his name a mantra on my lips. Resolution dawned with spring's thaw, the scandal backfiring, donors rallied, a viral petition hitting 50K signatures. The board ousting the bigot chief. Elias's grant tripled. His TED Talk going viral. Trauma doesn't discriminate, but care must. We celebrated low-key. Dinner at the Beanery. full circle with toasts to resilience. Romance bloomed anew. Weekend in Fire Island. Dunes and dances at tea dances. His body mine under moonlit waves. Emotion laced every glance. The depth of our tether a quiet miracle. In the end, as summer hummed toward another anniversary, we stood on the Brooklyn Bridge at sunset, wrists bridged in ink, crash leashed at our feet. Reborn, Elias murmured, hand in mine. Every crash, I squeezed, the skyline sprawling like possibility. Our story, dramatic detours, emotional excavations, romantic reckonings, ended human, flawed, fierce, enduring. In America's vast, varied heart, we'd found ours, beating steady, scars aglow,